Hello and welcome back again to our Nullitaire playthrough of Liberty or Death. And once again, a reminder that Nullitaire here means we're playing with 0 players, or in other words, we're playing all the bots against each other. So we have to be getting close now to a Winter Quarters round. There's only 2 left in the deck. We're getting close to the end of the game, and we've gone through seven cards or so in this campaign, so we have to be getting pretty close. This is what the board looks like right now. The most interesting recent story is that support came all the way down and actually tied with opposition at 20 for a short while. But the British have managed to push support back up a little bit. But they're pretty close together now. For a long time during this game, support was way high, up at like 34 or so, and opposition was still quite low, down around 14, 12, somewhere in that area. So there was a big gulf between them, but now that gulf has been lessened by quite a bit. All right, let's continue on with the next card. The next card is French Fleet Sails for the Caribbean, and the French are first eligible. Their half of the event says French battle in Grenada, move 2 British regulars from map to West Indies. British ineligible through the next card. But the French are not going to take that. Only their last bullet point in their event or command box came into play because the Treaty of Alliance has been played and the event is effective. So they had to roll, but they rolled a 1. So the answer to all those questions is no. We carry on with the flowchart. French resources are greater than 0. They're at 12. The Treaty of Alliance has been played. A D6 less than the available French regulars. Well, there are 2 available French regulars. So the only roll that would give a yes answer would be a 1. So they had to roll on that, but they rolled a 5. So the answer is no. Rebel cubes and leader exceed British pieces in a space with both. No, there are no spaces with rebellion cubes and British pieces. So no. Okay, so the French would like to march. And their only requirement here is to lose no rebel control. And so, as usual, I'll mark all the pieces that can move according to that simple restriction, and then we'll see where they go. The only French regulars on the map, except for the 2 in the West Indies, are in New York City. And all of those can move. They have to leave behind 1 continental in order to maintain control. But they'd have to do that anyway, because continentals can only come with the French 1 for 1. All right. Well, looking at the March command, it says any destination space with Patriot pieces, or any space if bringing along 1 or more continentals. Okay, so as long as they bring along those continentals, they don't have to land in a destination space that already has Patriot pieces. And both the French and the Patriots will have to pay a resource here. If we look at the procedure, we can move them into an adjacent space, or if they're in or adjacent to a rebellion-controlled city, and it is a rebellion-controlled city, to another rebellion-controlled city or a province adjacent. Well, the problem is there aren't any other cities that are rebellion-controlled. Okay, so that option is out. That sort of quick march option is out. So they can only move to an adjacent space, and there are only 2 adjacent spaces, New York Colony and New Jersey. So if they're going to move at all, those are the only 2 spaces they can move to. All right, now with that in mind, let's continue on with the march priorities. Within that, march with as many French regulars and continentals as possible to add rebel control, first in cities, and that should say then in colonies, within each first to spaces with most British pieces. Well, if they want to add control, and the only 2 choices are New York or New Jersey, then the choice is obvious. They're going to move to New Jersey. I've kind of crammed them all in there, but all those pieces are supposed to be in New Jersey. Again, I don't like to use the overflow boxes just because I like to be able to see adjacency and all that. So I'd rather just cram them in there. Washington and Lauzon go along with. because they go with the largest units, largest group of units. And they take control of New Jersey. All right, that's all the moving, that's all the marching that the French can do. So now they'd like to use a special activity. They'd like to skirmish, but a skirmish requires a space that has French regulars and British pieces. And there's no such space. The only French regulars are in New Jersey and in the West Indies. And there are no British pieces with any of those. So the next option is préparer la guerre. But they're not going to use that either because there are no unavailable French regulars and blockades. So that's 0. It says if 1d6 is less than or equal to unavailable French regulars and blockades. Well, it's not possible to roll a number less than or equal to 0 on a d6. So we skip that part. Then it says if no regulars or blockades moved and French resources equal 0, add 2 French resources. Well, the French resources are at 11. So they don't want to take those 2 free resources. They'd rather use naval pressure. So they're going to do that. Add a blockade, first in the city selected for battle, then at most support. Okay, so that means F and I goes up 1 level, and the French will move a blockade from the West Indies to a city. And once again, they want to choose a city with the highest support, but all the cities that have support are equal in that respect. So they rolled randomly to select one of those cities. They rolled a 3-2, and a 3-2 gives them Norfolk. So once again, the French blockade Norfolk. That drops support back down to 22. The Patriots are next eligible. They could take the event or a limited command. So as a reminder, the event says, move 2 British regulars from map to West Indies, British ineligible through the next card. The Patriots aren't interested in doing that. The questions in their event or command box are all a no, including the last one, because they still don't have 25 or more pieces on the map. So the answer is no. Patriot resources greater than 0, yes, they are at 14. Rebel cubes in a lead are greater than active royalist pieces in a space with both. Yes, that's true, because those cubes just marched into New Jersey, and there are royalist pieces there. So the answer is yes. Okay, so battle. Select all spaces where the rebel force level, if possible including French, plus modifiers, exceeds the British force level. Well, that should say royalist force level, plus modifiers. First with Washington, then in highest population, then most villages, then elsewhere. Well, I've calculated the modifiers and force level here, and it turns out to be 17 to 1 in favor of the rebellion. So they definitely will select this space for battle. Okay, so we'll see how the battle works out there. So the force level for the rebellion is 14. You have seven French regulars and 7 continentals. So they get to count all of those. 14. And on the Indian side, they have 3 activated war parties. So they get to count half of those rounded down, so that's 1. Okay, so that means that the Patriots get to roll the maximum 3 dice and the Indians roll 0. So the Patriots rolled a 6. And now looking down the defender loss level modifiers, we'll see how many losses the Indians have to suffer here. At least half attacking cubes are regulars. Yes, that's true. So they're now at 7. At least 1 attacking side piece is underground. No. At least 1 attacking leader. Yes. So now they're at 8. Attacking including the French with Lausanne. Yes. So that's 9. British attacking a blockaded city. No. British attacking in West Indies. No. Per defending fort. No. Indians defending an Indian reserve. No. Patriots or French defending with Washington. No. So they end up with a 9. Okay. On the other side, the Indians have 0 because they didn't roll any dice. And let's see if they get any losses, manage to strike a blow at all to the rebellion here. At least half defending cubes are regulars? No. At least 1 defending side piece underground? No. At least 1 defending leader? No. British defending in a blockaded city? No. British defending in West Indies? No. Per defending fort? No. Okay. So the Indians have to suffer 9 losses, and the rebellion suffers 0. So pretty clearly, all of those war parties and the village are going to have to be removed. The war parties count as 1 each, and the village counts as 1 each. So 9 is enough to get rid of all of them. There's no win the day in this case because the loser did not remove a cube or a fort. Okay, so that's the end of the battle. Both the Patriots and the French had to pay a resource for that. But since they only have a limited command here, this is all the Patriots will get to do this turn. The next card is Battle of the Chesapeake. The British are next eligible. Their side of the event says British assert their naval dominance. FNI to 0, British resources +2. Okay, well FNI is at 1 right now, so that would remove that blockade from Norfolk and give the British some resources. But they're not going to take it. Right now, support is slightly higher than opposition. It's at 22. Opposition is at 20. So even though this is an event that would shift support in the Royalist favor, because it would remove that blockade and that support at Norfolk would be counted again in total support. They won't take it for that reason because opposition is not greater than support. The last bullet point also came into effect because the British do control 5 or more cities, and this event is effective. So they had to roll on that, but they rolled a 3. So they're not going to take the event. British resources are greater than 0. They're at 4. 10 or more British regulars on the map. Yes, there are. There are 12 on the map right now. And rebels control the city without a rebel fort. Yes, they do. They control New York City, and there's no fort there. So that means that British bot wants to garrison. Okay, it says first execute a special activity. Well, we know what that means. Before they do a special activity, they've got to consider Howe and his special capability, which is before executing a British special activity, first lower FNI 1 level. All right, so FNI is going to go back to 0, and that French blockade, again, is removed from Norfolk. So now they do their special activity, which in this case is naval pressure. But now that FNI is at 0, what they'll do is simply add 1d3 British resources. They rolled on that and they got a 2. So they'll add 2 resources before completing their garrison command. The British now have 6 resources. So, garrison command. In origin spaces with British control, leave 2 more royalist than rebel pieces, and remove last regular only if population 0 or active support. Okay, so as usual, I'll mark all the pieces that can move according to those restrictions, and then we'll see where they go. Because garrison costs 2 resources, the British are right back down to 4. So I've marked all the British regulars that can move according to the restrictions on garrison. And there turn out to be 10 British regulars that can move. There's 6 down here in Georgia, 3 in Pennsylvania, and that 1 up there in Quebec City. Okay, so looking at the priorities from garrison, within that move, first, just enough to add British control. First were most rebels without Patriot Fort, then New York City, then random. Okay, well, there are only 2 cities without British control. That's New York City and Norfolk. And so first where, we're told, first where most rebels without a Patriot Fort. Okay, well, that's New York City. So they'll start with New York City, and then Norfolk will be the next priority. But now where do they move from? Unlike other commands, and I've mentioned this before, a garrison doesn't have this, starting with the largest groups or something like that, so that you just move these sort of group by group by their priorities. Instead, it says, just enough. First, just enough to add British control. So the way I've always read that is, you have to select randomly from these spaces where British pieces can move from, and then move them out of there, just enough. to take control of New York City. Don't move them all as a group, but move just enough. And if it's not enough, well, then you select another space randomly. Okay, so the British have rolled for that already. They rolled a 5-2. That gives them Southwest Virginia, but following it down, we get to Georgia. It's the first space that has movable British regulars here. Okay, so they want to move just enough to take control of New York City, so that will be 2. They'll move 2 British regulars from Georgia to New York City. And next they want to move just enough to take control of Norfolk, and there's still some regulars here. So they'll move 1 into Norfolk. Okay. And then they'll continue moving out of Georgia for any, subsequent priorities here until they run out. And if they run out before they finish their priorities, then they'll select one of the other spaces, Pennsylvania or Quebec City. Okay, but for right now, they're going to move 2 regulars into New York City and 1 into Norfolk from Georgia to take control of those 2 spaces. Okay, there's still 7 movable regulars here. So we carry on with the garrison priorities. So we've done the 3rd bullet point, just enough to add British control. So the 4th point, then to give each British control city first 1 or more regular, if without active support. Well, all the cities are at active support or already have at least 1 regular in them. So that's already satisfied. Okay, the next point. Then 3 or more British cubes first wear underground militia. Well, there's plenty of cities that don't have at least 3 cubes. So, but we're given no particular priorities for selecting them again. So they're just going to have to do that randomly once again. So they'll have to roll on this to select from among those cities that don't already have 3 cubes. They rolled a 3-3. That gives the first selection of a city, Boston. And Boston does not have 3 or more cubes, so British bot will garrison by moving 2 more cubes out of Georgia into Boston, so that there are at least 3 cubes there. The next roll is a 3-2, which gives Norfolk. Okay, well, there's only 1 cube in Norfolk right now. There's only 1 cube left to move out of Georgia, so once that one has moved, they'll have to choose randomly between Pennsylvania and Quebec City to move the other one. They roll a 1-2, and that gives Pennsylvania. That's where that second regular will come from. So 1 regular moves from Pennsylvania into Norfolk to add 3 or more cubes there. British bot is still rolling to select random cities to place 3 or more cubes. They roll a 4-3. So 4-3 gives Boston. Boston already has 3 or more cubes. Quebec City. Well, Quebec City has a movable British regular, but it also already has 3 or more cubes. So that one will simply just stay there, and that will no longer be a movable piece. Okay, so they'll select another city. There's only 2 more movable pieces from Pennsylvania. The next roll is a 4-1, which is New York City, which right now only has 1 British cube, so 1 more regular from Pennsylvania moves to New York City. There's only 1 regular left that could move from Pennsylvania, but there are 2 cities still that do not have 3 or more cubes, Savannah and Charlestown. So they roll once again. Roll a 4-2 this time. 4-2 gives Norfolk, that already has 3, Charlestown. Okay, so that last British regular heads to Charlestown. So now, as part of the garrison, it says, if no cubes have moved yet, instead muster. Okay, well, they did move cubes. If any cubes did move, activate underground militia, then displace most rebels, first to a province with most opposition, then least support, within that to lowest population. Okay, so the garrison command says, then In each city that is not blockaded, activate 1 militia for every 3 British cubes there. Well, there are no militia in any of the cities. The only rebels in the cities is that 1 Continental there in New York City. It says, then if desired in one city, with British control, no Patriot fort, and not blockaded, displace all rebellion units to an adjacent space. So they're going to want to displace that 1 Continental to an adjacent space, either New York Colony or New Jersey. But we're told British bot wants to displace most rebels first to a province with most opposition. Well, they're both at active opposition, but New York has 2 population, so it has the most opposition in this case. So they'll displace that Continental into New York. Okay, that's the end of the turn for the British. The Indians are up next. They could take the event or a limited command. So the event, again, says FNI to 0, British resources plus 2. FNI is at 0. So all this would do would be to give the British 2 resources. And of course, the Indians are not especially interested in that. However, that last bullet point does matter here. The event is effective. There are 4 or more villages on the map. So they had to roll for that, but they rolled a 4. So the answer to all these questions is no. We carry on with their flowchart. So support plus a d6 greater than opposition. Yes, because support is greater than opposition. Gather would place 2 or more villages. No, it would only place 1 village right now in Pennsylvania. Or a d6 is less than the available war parties. Well, there are 4 available war parties, so they had to roll on that, and they rolled a 2. So that is less than 4. So the answer is yes. So they are going to place a village after all. So place villages where room and 3 or more war parties, 2 or more if corn planters in the space, first with Indian leader. Okay, so the first thing, well, the only thing they're going to do, because this is a limited command, is put a village into Pennsylvania. Because corn planters in the space, it only costs 1 war party. They will have to pay for this because that's not Indian Reserve, but they'll remove 1 of their active war parties and replace it with a village. The next card is Naval Battle in West Indies. The French are first eligible. Their half of the event says French hold their own in the Battle de la Dominique. British remove 4 British regulars from West Indies to available. Well, that would do precisely nothing because there are no British regulars in the West Indies. Okay, so this is a completely ineffective event. We can just skip the event or command box. French resources greater than 0. Yes, they're at 10. The Treaty of Alliance has been played. 1d6 less than the available French regulars. Well, there are 2 regulars available for the French. So as long as they don't roll a 1, the answer will be no, and they rolled a 4. Okay, so the answer is no. Rebel cubes plus leader exceed British pieces in space with both. Well, once again, there's only a few places with rebel cubes, and there are no British pieces in any of those spaces. So the answer is no. So the French want to march yet again. And their only restriction is to lose no rebel control. So once again, I'll mark all the pieces that can move, and then we'll see where they go. So all those pieces in New Jersey can move out, except they have to leave behind 1 Continental in order to maintain control there. But otherwise, all the other pieces are movable. So the next bullet point, within that, march with as many French regulars and Continentals as possible to add rebel control, first in cities. Okay, so they want to add rebel control to a city, and there are 2 cities adjacent to New Jersey, New York City and Philadelphia. And either way they go, they would add rebel control. Okay. So it says, within each, first to spaces with most British pieces. Well, New York and Philadelphia are tied with respect to British pieces as well. So they're going to have to choose randomly between those 2. They don't have any other priorities. They already rolled on that. They rolled a 3-2. 3-2, which comes right under Philadelphia to Pennsylvania. So following it around, of course, we're going to get to New York before we manage to get to Pennsylvania. There it is, New York City. Sorry, before we manage to get to Philadelphia. Okay, so Lausanne and Washington, along with all those regulars and continentals, march back into New York City to take control once again. Both the Patriots and the French have to pay a resource for that. And that's all the marching they can do, because there are no more movable pieces for the French. So now they'd like to use a special activity. They'd like to skirmish in one space with both French and British, not selected for battle or muster, first the West Indies. Well, clearly that's New York. Okay, so skirmish. The second part of the procedure is going to come into play here. Remove 2 British cubes and 1 French regular, because they want to maximize the most British cubes. So they'll remove 2 of those British regulars and 1 French regular, 2 casualties. That moves cumulative British casualties up to 21 and cumulative rebellion casualties up to 13. Okay, the Patriots are up next. They can take the event or a limited command. Again, the event is completely ineffective because it says British remove 4 British regulars from West Indies to available, and there aren't any British regulars in the West Indies. So, ineffective event, we simply skip the event or command box. Patriot resources greater than 0, yes, they are at 12. Rebel cubes plus leader greater than active royalist pieces in a space with both. Yes, New York City again. There's that 1 British regular still sitting there. And it's definitely outnumbered. Okay, and that's the only space like that. Okay. So, the Patriots are going to choose the battle. Select all spaces where the rebel force level, if possible including French, plus modifiers, exceeds the British force level. Again, that should say rebellion force level, plus modifiers, first with Washington, then in highest population, then where most villages, and elsewhere. So clearly, they're going to select this spot. First with Washington, so they'll select the spot. And so just for the, I did the math on this just to make sure. And the rebellion force level plus modifiers turns out to be 15, and the British force level plus modifiers is 2. So obviously favors the rebellion here. Okay, so let's see what happens in this battle. This is a limited command, so this is all the Patriots will get to do this turn. So now we've resolved the battle. The attackers, the rebellion, has a force level of 12. It's all the Patriot Continentals plus French up to the same number. So that's all of them. So 6 plus 6, that's 12. And the force level for the defenders is 1. They have just 1 British cube there. All right, that means that the rebellion gets to roll their maximum 3 dice, and the British get to roll 0 dice. They already did the roll, and the rebellion rolled a 6. So looking at the loss level modifiers, starting with 6, at least half attacking cubes regulars, yes, so now that's 7. At least 1 attacking side piece underground, no. At least 1 attacking leader, yes, so now that's 8. Attacking including French with Lausanne, yeah, so that's 9. British attacking a blockaded city, no. British attacking West Indies, no. Per defending fort, no. Indians defending Indian Reserve, no. Patriots, French defending with Washington, no. So once again, we have a 9 for the defender's loss. All right, well, there's only 1 British regular there, so 9 should be enough to take care of it. And it goes to casualties. All right, on the other side, let's see if the British are able to strike the rebellion at least a little bit here. At least half defending cubes are regulars. Yes, that's true. There's just 1 there. So that gives them at least a 1. At least 1 defending side piece underground, no. At least 1 defending leader, no. British defending in a blockaded city, no. British defending in West Indies, no. Per defending fort, no. Okay, so the rebellion does have to suffer 1 loss. And that means they have to remove a French regular. Even though that counts as 2 losses, they have to absorb that one first. Okay, so the British lose 1 and the French lose 1 in this enormous battle. So cumulative casualties go up 1 on both sides for that. And both the Patriots and the French had to pay a resource for that. On to the next card. The next card is the affair of Fielding and Byland. And the British are first eligible. Their side of the event says British seize Dutch contraband. British resources plus 3, lower F&I 1 level. Well, F&I is already at 0, so that part of the event wouldn't do anything. So all this would do is give the British 3 resources. So in their event or command box, the only relevant question was the last one. They do control 5 or more cities, and this event is effective, so they had to roll on that. But they rolled a 2, so they're not going to take the event. Okay, British resources greater than 0. Yes, they are at 4. 10 or more British regulars on the map, and the rebels control a city without a rebel fort. Well, the rebels do control a city without a rebel fort. But there are only 9 regulars on the map now, because many were lost recently to skirmishes and battles. So the answer is no. Available British regulars greater than a D6. Yes, that is true. There are 7 British regulars available. So they're going to muster. It says place regulars first in neutral or passive. Within that, first to add British control. Then where Tories are the only British units, then elsewhere within each first and highest population. Well, the thing is, all of the cities and all of the colonies are such that right now either they are active or passive, or they're already under British control. So there's no city or colony where adding 6 regulars would give control that's also at neutral or passive. Okay. But muster says location, regulars in any one city that is not blockaded, or an adjacent colony, or the West Indies. And the West Indies is neutral or passive, of course, because it's always neutral. And putting 6 regulars there would give the British control of that space. Okay. The British haven't considered that up till now because they've always prioritized highest population. But now that every city and colony is either not neutral or already under British control, then now the West Indies comes into play. And the British are going to muster in the West Indies. So the West Indies are now under British control. That cost them 1 resource. So moving on with the muster command here. Then place Tories. Well, there aren't any Tories available. They're all out on the map, or there are casualties. So there's no way to place any Tories. So on to the next point. Then in one space, first one already selected above. If opposition is greater than support plus a D3, well, no, because support is greater than opposition. Or no British forts available. Yes, there are no British forts available. All right, so the British would like to reward loyalty, and it says first one already selected above. Well, the only space selected is the West Indies, and you can't reward loyalty in the West Indies because it's always neutral. That won't do anything. But they could select other spaces. But keep in mind, any space they select, they have to pay a resource, simply for selecting it. And then they have to pay more resources for doing the reward loyalty. All right, but in any case, they may want to do that. Okay, so reward loyalty. Well, the only information we're given on rewarding loyalty is down here. It says first where fewest raid and propaganda markers. Within that, for largest shift and support opposition, do not reward loyalty in a space where only raid propaganda markers would be removed. Well, the only 2 spaces where rewarding loyalty is even possible are Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, right? Because rewarding loyalty requires a regular, a Tory, and control. And those are the only 2 spaces that have that. That's not already at active support. Okay, but there's 2 propaganda markers in Pennsylvania. So if they selected Pennsylvania, it would cost them 2. Well, it would cost them 3 because they'd have to pay 1 to select Pennsylvania, and then another 2 to remove those propaganda markers. So it cost them 3 just to get started in Pennsylvania. And they only have 3 resources, so that wouldn't do anything. You know, select the space and remove 2 propaganda markers. That's all it would do. So they'd rather choose Philadelphia. Pay 1 to select the space and then pay 2 resources to shift it to active support. So that is what they're going to do. That moves total support up to 26. And the British are now broke. Okay, so that means they can't select any more spaces. So, now they'd like to use a special activity. Of course, we have to remember Howe and his special capability of lowering FNI, but FNI is at 0, so it won't do anything right now. So let's see. After muster, they'd like to skirmish. Well, the problem with that is the only two spaces where skirmish is possible are Pennsylvania. Skirmish requires a space with British regulars and rebellion pieces. So Pennsylvania, because it has one rebellion piece there. But skirmish won't do anything there because skirmish can only remove active militia. It can't remove underground militia. The only other space is the West Indies, where there are two French regulars, but that was just selected for muster. You can't skirmish on the same turn in a space that was a space for muster. So there's no skirmish possible here. Instead, they want to use naval pressure, and since FNI is 0, they'll simply add 1d3 British resources. They rolled on that, and they got a 2. So they get 2 resources, and that is the end of their turn. The Indians are up next. They could take the event or a limited command. Once again, the event says British resources plus 3, lower FNI 1 level. And since FNI is already at 0, all this event would do is add 3 British resources. And the Indians aren't interested in doing that. They had to roll on that last bullet point, but they rolled a 2. So they're not going to take the event. Instead, we carry on with their flowchart. So support plus a d6 is greater than opposition. Yes, simply because support is greater than opposition. Gather would place 2 or more villages. No, not right now. Gather wouldn't place any villages. Or a d6 is less than the available war parties. Well, there are 5 available war parties. So they had to roll on that, and they rolled a 5. So the answer is no. A space has war party and British regulars. Yes, actually, that is true. Pennsylvania has war parties and 1 British regular. So, for the first time in the game, we're going to have a scout. It says, move 1 war party plus most regulars plus Tories possible without changing control in origin space. First to a Patriot fort, then to a village with enemy, then to remove most rebel control. Then skirmish to remove first to Patriot fort, then most enemy pieces. All right, since we haven't done scout before in this playthrough, let's take a look at it. So it says, location, any one province with war parties and British regulars. Okay, we have such a place, that's Pennsylvania. Costs 1 resource, and the British also have to pay a resource. Okay, they have at least that. Procedure, Indians move at least 1 war party into an adjacent province. Activate all moving war parties. At least 1 British regular must, and Tories, up to the number of British regulars, may move with the war parties at the Indians' option. All pieces move from one province to another as a single group. Activate all militia in the destination space, then Indians may use British regulars to skirmish in the destination province. Okay, so at least 1 war party, and then a British regular, and maybe that Tory as well, will go along according to these priorities. Let's see. Move 1 war party. Okay, so they're only going to take 1 war party. Plus most regulars and Tories possible without changing control in the origin space. Well, then they can take both of them. That fort is enough, together with the other Indian pieces there, to maintain control. Okay, so they can move 1 of the war parties and both the regular and the Tory out of there and still maintain control. So they will move those 3 pieces. First to a Patriot fort. Okay, well, there's only 1 Patriot fort adjacent to Pennsylvania, and that's New York. So that's where they will move. Because it wasn't possible to keep a war party underground through scout, scouting requires activating all the moving war parties. They move a war party that's already active. Okay, that removes control from New York. And now the rest of scouting is using the British to skirmish against the Patriots. And we're told, skirmish to remove first the Patriot fort, then the most enemy pieces. So looking at British skirmish, there's only one rebellion cube there. So all they're going to be able to do is simply remove that one. But they don't lose any of their own pieces here. So the skirmish in New York removes one continental, and it goes to casualties. The British now take control of New York colony, and that casualty moves cumulative rebellion casualties up to 15. Because that was a limited command, that's all the Indians get to do this turn. At long last, we finally found the winter quarters card. This seems like it was a really long campaign. But there it is. Okay, so we'll switch these cards and we'll do a winter quarters round. As before, I will simply give a summary of what happens in each round of the winter quarters. So, victory. No faction is at victory right now. Support is still higher than opposition, so that favors the Royalists. However, cumulative casualties are higher on the British side, so that favors the French. And forts versus villages favors the Patriots. So nobody's at victory. Okay, so moving on to the next round. The supply phase is next. So during this phase, the British elected to pay to stay in only one place, and that was New York. At the time, there was an Indian war party there, so the British had control of that space. And so they were thinking, we could do reward loyalty there, so we want to stay. But since then, that Indian piece has abandoned them, and they lost control. So they won't be able to do reward loyalty there after all. In any case, that's the only place they paid to stay. The Patriots only have 2 units not in supply. That's these militia over here in the Northwest and in Pennsylvania. But since there's only one piece in each of those spaces, they can stay without paying, because the Patriots remove one for every 2, rounding down. So if there's only one piece, they can stay for free. So those pieces get to stay there. The French were all in supply. They're all in New York City, where the Patriots or the rebellion has control. And the Indians were all in supply except that one war party that was in New York. And it elected to leave. It could have gone to the closest village space. So that really was Quebec, Northwest, or Pennsylvania. So they chose randomly from those, and it ended up going to the Northwest. Okay, so now we have to do the West Indies. The French have to initiate a battle there. So let's see what happens. So the French force level here is 2, and the British force level is 6. This means that the French won't roll any dice, and the British will roll 2 dice. But we remember that the French are the attackers here. The French have to initiate this attack. All right, well, the British rolled a 4 with their 2 dice, and of course the French get 0 because they didn't roll any. So let's do the defender loss level first. So the French have 0 to start with because they didn't roll any dice. At least half attacking cubes are regulars. Yes, that's true. So now they're at 1. At least 1 attacking side piece is underground. No. At least 1 attacking leader. No. Attacking including French with Lausanne. No. British attacking a blockaded city. No. British attacking in the West Indies and at least 1 squadron is present. No. This battle is happening in the West Indies and there is a squadron present, but the British aren't attacking. Per defending fort, no. Indians defending an Indian reserve, no. Patriots and French defending with Washington, no. Okay, so that's a 1 for the defenders. They have to suffer 1 loss, and that means they have to remove 1 of those regulars. Even though that counts as 2 losses, they have to suffer that loss. So the British lose 1 to casualties. What about the French? Okay, well, the British start with 4. Going down the line here, at least half defending cubes are regulars. Yes, that's true. So now they're at 5. At least 1 defending side piece is underground. No. At least 1 defending leader. No. British defending in a blockaded city. No. British defending in West Indies and at least 1 squadron is present. Yes, that is true. The British are defending here and there are squadrons present. So that brings it back down to 4. Per defending fort, there are no forts. All right, so the French have to suffer 4 losses, and each of the French regulars counts as 2. So that means they're completely eliminated from the West Indies. The British lose 1 regular, and the French lose 2. And those all go to casualties. Now, win the day here doesn't happen because in the rule book, again, this isn't written on this foldout, which I find really annoying. But here in the rule book it says, win the day occurs only in battles with loser removing a cube or a fort, loser removing 2 or more pieces, and not in West Indies. Okay, so you can't win the day in the West Indies, which, it makes sense anyway, right? I mean, that space is always neutral, so you're not going to shift it, towards support or opposition. And no spaces are adjacent, so, it's not going to spill over into any adjacent spaces. I guess the only thing is, I suppose if the rebellion won the day there, then you might think, oh, well, they can do a free rally anywhere. Okay, but that's not the case. West Indies battle simply never has win the day. Okay, so that's the end of the Battle of the West Indies. So that pushes casualties up again. Cumulative British casualties are at 23, and cumulative rebellion is at 17. Well, here's a curious thing. At this point, the British and the French, if they want to remain in the West Indies, have to pay a resource to stay. Obviously, the French aren't going to do it because they're gone. They're not there anymore. But the British are broke. They don't have any resources to pay. So they actually have to abandon the West Indies. Even though they just won this battle there, they don't have the resources to remain. So they have to split, which is a bummer for them, right? Because they'll get 5 resources in the resource phase, which is coming up next, if they'd stay. But they simply don't have the resources, so they got to go. The resource phase is next. The British get resources first, and they got the number of their forts plus the population of cities that they control, which turns out to be 6 plus 6 is 12, so they are at 12. Then the Indians get half the number of villages, which is 6, so they got 3 resources. That brings them up to 5. The Patriots get the number of spaces they control divided by 2. So they have 4 spaces that they control, so that's 2, plus the number of their forts, 6, so they got 8 total resources. That brings them up to 19. And then the French got the F&I level, 0, plus the population of cities not under British control. So that's only 2 resources for them. That brings them to 10. And neither the British nor the French get the 5 resources for controlling the West Indies. Okay, that's the resource phase. The support phase is next. And there was no rewarding loyalty or committees of correspondence. Like I said, the British wanted to reward loyalty in New York, but they lost control when that war party left, so they weren't able to do that. There's no other space where they can reward loyalty. And the Patriots, there was no space where they could reward loyalty. All of the spaces under their control are already at active opposition. The redeployment phase is next. There's no leader change because the French are first eligible on the next card, and Lauzon is their leader. There's no further changes after Lauzon. So there'll be no leader change. Leader redeployment. All the leaders wanted to stay where they were except for Howe. He wanted to be in a space with more regulars, so he moved from Quebec City down to Norfolk. And British release date is irrelevant right now. Lower F&I 1 level. Well, F&I was already at 0, so nothing happened there. The desertion phase is next. The Patriots only had 4 militia on the map, so they didn't have to remove any of those. But they had 12 Continentals, so they had to remove 2. The Indians got to choose the first one, and they took the one that was in New Jersey. And the Patriots chose the second one, and they took one out of New Hampshire. For Tory desertion, there were 12 Tories on the map, and so the British had to remove 2. The French got to choose the first one, and they took that Tory out of New York to give the rebellion back control of New York. And the British chose the second one, and they took that one from Philadelphia, so as not to lose any control. Okay, that's desertion phase. And finally, we have the reset phase. So all the propaganda markers have been removed from the board. All the factions have gone eligible. All the casualties have gone back to available. The war parties and militia have all gone underground. And the event on the Winter Quarters card has been done. It says, War on the Frontier. If Patriots or Indians are ahead in their second victory condition, that faction removes one of its forts or villages during the reset phase. So that meant that the Patriots had to remove a fort. And they had no particular priorities for this, so they selected randomly, and one of the forts in Massachusetts was returned. Okay, that's the end of the Winter Quarters round. We move on to the next card. I'm going to end this video here. We have just 1 year left in the war. It's the spring of 1780 now. So we're getting very close. There's not many cards left in that little stack there. So we'll continue with this next time. Once again, if you enjoy this, please consider giving the video a like. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see future stuff like this. And I'll see you next time.